I don't know that to be true. It's just there's little key indicators that I don't know if it's true, but suggest that there might be something else beyond just the toxic relationship that they have with one another. So,
Or perhaps people have just gone a bit batshit because the aircon's down.
yeah, that could be it. Sure, sure. I didn't even
No,
think of
we
that, John. Hey, everybody out there. Welcome back to another Friday episode of the Audiophiles. I'm Andy, that's John, and today is a song that was offered up by one of you lovely folks out there in the listening audience. To be specific, it came from Brozetta Stone, 7520. Cha, bro. And they offered up this track on the Me Without You January 1979 episode. And it is a band that goes by the name of The Fall of Troy. I am familiar with some of their stuff. It's been a while since I've listened to it. But the track that they wanted us to check out by The Fall of Troy is Act One, Scene One. Now, John, I'm pretty sure you are not familiar with The Fall of Troy, right? It's not a bold assumption for me to make.
not as a band, no, but I'm glad to see we're getting back to the classics. A bit of fucking culture on this channel for a change. Works of Homer, not Simpson. The Tales of Paris and Helen. Why not, eh? Act one, scene one. Um, yeah,
Excellent.
can't
Well,
can't wait.
I can't wait to hear what your reaction is going to be to all of this, given the genre that it occupies. But I am not going to say anything further. I'm going to let you go off and give this thing a spin, and then you can come back and let Brosetta Stone and the rest of us know your thoughts.
Open wide, space and time distort the mind. Constantly, you dance in sheets. It feels so right to be so wrong.
That's a lot to take in. So yeah, it starts with this guitar. It's this sort of choppy, twitchy, rhythmic guitar. I like it because it's not just straightforward. And then in comes the drums, the bass, and the vocals. He's got one of those vocals. The tone to it. It's kind of a mixture of kind of noughties, indie rock, but also there's a bit of like progressive in there. Sounds like a lower register John Anderson. Yeah. Yeah, interesting stuff. And you're getting these really odd guitar twiddles at the end, these the flourishes at the end of lines that kind of are a little bit proggy. Yeah, interesting.
No more love set aside. Leave your heart at the bedside. Contaminate the air like you do. Swear I'm telling you the truth. Jaded masquerade, no names. Contradicting faces, it's all the same. I'm telling you the truth.
Okay, I'm not catching a lot of the lyrics there, as you can imagine. It's about a JD Masquerade and telling you the truth. The guitars in this are doing all this like it's almost like they're square bashing, very militaristic, stomping around, just marching. Um, Not a great sort of melodic contribution. And then he starts screeching and screaming. It sounds to me a bit like sort of toddler rage in a supermarket that someone wants their Sunny Delight, or perhaps has had too much Sunny Delight. I find it hard to take it seriously. It sounds silly. But, I'm sure there are plenty who love that, and all power to them. And then it goes into a bit where it's almost like this sort of rock opera type possible voice. But that's definitely, so there's a lot of there's a mixture of stuff going on. There's some sort of like post-hardcore. There's also this sort of metal influence, and then this prog influence as well. It's a real sort of blend of all these things. Yeah, interesting. So that was an interesting section there. A lot of twiddling, a lot of prancing about. That guitar bit, it kind of reminds me. God, it's like it was there. It reminds me of the sort of prancing you get from those horses doing the dressage. It's that sort of thing. But then we've got this sort of sort of like Sabbath-like heavy riffs in. Really not very subtle at all. Any of this, really, and then the screeching comes back in again. I mean, I never understood it. I remember a guy at college. He was into Fields of Neff, and I thought there was another band that he really liked from. I think they're from Norwich, called Lawnmower of Death, and it was god awful. This sort of screeching nonsense. I mean, Fields of Neff were just obviously a bit of a joke, or treated as such anyway, with their 10-second songs. But then it just dropped down into something else. So we'll just go back a wee bit. I really like the bass and the drums here. We have some lovely guitar then. It's almost like indie-ish, post-rocky. And then this militaristic drumming coming back in. It reminded me of someone shuffling cards. I get this thoughtfulness at the end. Wow. Yeah, interesting. Right, obviously not my bag. Um, I found the sort of post-hardcore metal-y type stuff just didn't appeal to me. It's not to say that it's terrible or anything, because there's loads of people out there. It felt, I don't mean this in a pejorative way, but it felt a little bit juvenile. Um, and don't get me wrong, sort of juvenile sounding songs have their place. I listen to plenty. But I'm not the target audience, and it doesn't hit it with me. Um, but there was definitely elements within this song which I really liked and appreciated. I thought the drumming, I mean, the sort of metally type bits was very heavy handed, but the other parts was really nicely done and really well controlled. That sort of instrumental section going through was lovely. Um, just really thoughtful. Yeah, so lots of contrasts and a mixed bag, I guess we could call it. But a very interesting um, suggestion. So we need to find out a bit more about the fall of Troy. Rest in my classics. So to do that, we should go back and chop it up with Andy.
All right, so you're back. It's intermission. You've seen Act One, Scene One. What did you make of this track by the Fall of Troy, John?
By a bear. So yeah, it starts off with a quite enticing rhythmic riff on the guitar. It's slightly awkward and choppy,
Mm.
and sort of draws you in. And then with a flourish of the guitar, in comes the drums, the bass, and the vocals. And we get a right old gallimaufry of styles here. There's like proggy twiddles from the guitar, which sort of embellish at the end of lines of chugging guitar. Sounded like square bashing, the equivalent of like, raw recruits just marching up and down
Mm.
squares of, in a sort of post-hardcore style. There's also smatterings of like metal sound of sorts, maybe iron filings. And then there's the vocals. Sometimes he sounds like a noughties sort of indie singer, and other times there's like a 70s touch to it, almost like I don't know if this is crazy, but I got like a lower register John Anderson.
Mm.
There's a bit of that about his delivery as well, for a while anyway. While pondering this, I realise I've got to listen to some of the words, and I catch something about feels so right to be so wrong. And then normal love set aside and leave your heart at the bedside. So interesting transactions there.
Mm.
Um, we then go into a section which feels like the music is prancing, like one of the dancing horses in the dressage competition. It is that sort of high kicking, highfalutin stuff. This sort of musical motif really does have its roots in like 80s metal, 100%. I get the phrase jaded masquerade and telling you the truth with even more stomping action from the guitar. So they're really almost lost all sense of melody here. The only melody's in the vocal line, and
Yep.
it's almost this rhythmic percussive guitars. And then on the second time round, the singer squeals, "I swear," like a mean girl who's just lost her prize beret. Um, and then we go into this little bit where multiple voices go into sort of rock opera, almost a bit like Bohemian Rhapsody, sort of. I just want your attention, baby, I think he said. Um, unfortunately, this doesn't seem to work because we then get a few more lines in the style of that sort of screamo, tired toddler in the supermarket who really wants his sunny delight. Um, no chance of understanding what the hell is going on about there. We then come back and there's more of that jaded masquerade telling the truth section. So I think this is a refrain or a chorus of some sort. So I think it appears three times, or at least twice.
Hmm.
This then leads into a sort of proggy, sort of fidget spinning section on the guitar, which again is all this sort of like it's like that if you were putting it
Uh-huh.
in terms of hand movement. Um, there's some really interesting drumming behind that though. Um, it's pounding away at pace and then stop starting the tempo, giving this sort of uh, hurdy-gurdy, jerky type feel to it, which makes it interesting, really
Yes.
interesting. I have to say, I could barely hear the bass at any point in all of this. It was lost in the source. It really was. Um, the guitar does feel quite indulgent at this point. I like traffic wardens with huge, extravagant epaulets, like Italian army. It just felt unnecessary. And it then drops down with the subtlety of Peter Sutcliffe into some sort of heavy riffing, like Sabbath almost. And then we get more tantrum screams. And then again, with the sort of flick of the old ADHD, we get this change again. It's this thoughtful passage where we can hear the bass. um, it goes all sort of like almost post-rocky indie.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I love
and
this part, if I'm being honest
it
with
really, really nice, yeah.
you. Yeah.
And it feels, I hate to say this, but more grown up and considered, contrasting with
Hmm.
the previous sort of
Yeah.
kindergarten rage. Um, the drums sweep through this section really nicely, and you get this rise of the cymbal action to a like crescendo, which then carries forth, and you get some lovely lead guitar notes riding on the top of the melody, really shining through. Um, yeah, it's really good. And then the song sort of crescents and then crashes down with a really nice sort of vibrato like death rattle from the guitar as it fades off, and then we get like almost a minute of this sort of thoughtful sort of
Hmm.
dawdling. I
Yes.
just imagine I imagine fake lilies on a pond just twisting around and round, spinning. That's the sort of picture that I had in my mind of that, and it goes to a gentle fade. So yeah, I would say that pretty obviously the sort of post-hardcore screamo stuff is not my bag at all. Um, it did feel really juvenile in places. Um, but that has its audience, and there's loads of juvenile stuff that I listened to when I was younger, but I'm not the target audience for this. So I'm sure they won't be surprised or even upset to know that I didn't really appreciate it or go for it. However, there were bits in this which I really did like. I thought the drumming was superb. I thought the guitar work when it was focused was really great. I don't really go for that sort of da 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 da. I've heard all that shit before. To be fair, it just didn't really tick my box. But that sort of last quarter of it was really interesting, I felt. But it's, you pay your money, you take your choice. There will be plenty of people who will love all that and really that will hit their mark, when he does his screaming. Um, I remember listening. I think I said the reaction. I remember I had a housemate once who the joke band at the time in the late 80s, early 90s was the Fields of Nephilim. Um, um, and other bands like them, and they do this like, instead of proper singing.
Yeah.
And he was into a band called Lawnmower of Death, which were very similar, where they do 20-second noise songs that were just like this burst of noise, and it's pathetic. Um, Hopefully my memory serves me right, and they were called that. There might be a really nice, charming band that does, wonderful folk music called Lawnmower of Death, and I've got it completely wrong. And if that's the case, I apologise to all the mowers of death, but I don't think I have. So yeah, I heard all this before, so it doesn't appeal to me. But like I said, it doesn't make it terrible or anything like that. It's just not my thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I'm glad that I know the song. So going into this, I was like, concerned, I guess is the closest I to how you would feel about this one. Not so much for my own feelings toward it, but for Brozetta's, who
Yeah, yeah,
offered it up for us to give a go. I'm glad you gave it an honest go and assessment and found in it things that sounded fantastic and then other parts that I knew would deter you from liking the song. I just didn't I was hopeful that you wouldn't get caught up in one and not be able to see or
yeah,
appreciate the
yeah,
other,
yeah.
and you went into this with a very fair mind. So I can appreciate that, even if some individuals who may have tuned into this episode have an immediate visceral reaction to you taking any issue with it at all. I think that that's, unfair expectations. If that's what people want when they turn into a reaction channel, then they're not doing it from an altruistic way. Who experiences music and just blanketly throws their adulation into it out of the gate immediately? I mean, that can happen, but that's not going to happen. We're all coming up on 800 episodes. That's not going to happen every single time. But your ability to extrapolate from a listen things you like and things you don't, and to be able to politely underscore why you don't, and effusively, for as close as you get as a Brit to being effusive, throw roses when it's due. I appreciate the way you came at this. And I would agree. And even with my overall assessment of the Fall of Troy, I think there are songs by them that I really, really enjoy. There are songs by them that I don't like very much at all. And there are songs that exist that have parts that I love, and other parts I'm like, why'd you do that? And this, if I'm being fair, is kind of one of those for me, where the petulant screaming, um, which isn't even a main part of the song if you really take a step back and look at how much of that was in there versus how much of the great stuff is in there too. But that's still true. Like that whole part where it went into the post Rocky bit that you talked about. Fucking I loved that. It was so beautiful and evocative, and especially the guitar work and the last 45 seconds of the song, where we're all brought back to this tranquil state after this absolute cardiogram of, ups and downs that we were just on. I really appreciate that too, and think it's a really smart way to kind of like bring this thing to an end. Um Things that I like that I knew that you might struggle with. One of them for me was the guitar, and I'm actually glad that you were like found more redeeming about the guitar than you took issue with. But I know the chugga chugga stuff is not usually up your alley. And there was a lot of that dun 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 going on with the guitars here. And then the other is the what you would probably call the doing things for the sake of doing them approach to guitar. It's like, oh, you could do something that requires talent, so you have to shoehorn it into a song, which is the Van Halen-y flourishes that were
Yeah.
popping up here and there, which I think sound beautiful, but do I feel like at times they could be a bit ham-handed, or yes, or a bit necessary? No. But nonetheless, it is quite talented. I think for me,
Mm.
this is like 70% of this song I really, really, really like. And then there's this niggling 30% where I question why they did things, and that shouldn't fucking matter to them. That I feel that way, and I'm sure
Yeah,
it
yeah.
doesn't. But that, and it also doesn't take away from the fact that if someone asked me if I like the song, the first thing I would go to would be all the things I do like, because there's more of it, frankly, than there is things that I don't. But yeah, that is my feeling towards the song. I'd probably say it's close, but not on the nose to where how you feel about the song after giving it one go. Yeah, and it shouldn't go without saying also that the Fall of Troy is a pretty influential band inside this subgenre of music. They're an American post-hardcore band from Washington State. The band is a trio consisting of Thomas Erak, Erak, guitars, vocals, keyboards, Andrew Forsman, drums and percussions, and John Henry Hendo Batts on bass and screamed vocals. When the group started, their bassist was Tim Ward, who was later replaced by Frank Ian, following his departure from the band in late 2007. Ian would remain with the band until their initial breakup in 2010, but Ward rejoined the band in Ian's place for their reunion in 2013. Ward once again left the band in 2016 and was replaced by the band Just Like Vinyl's bassist, the aforementioned John Henry Hendo Batts. They have been classified as post-hardcore, math rock, experimental rock, emo, progressive rock, and mathcore. The group has released 6 full-length albums, 2 EPs, and 2 singles. Prior to the fall of Troy's formation, when they were only 17 years old, all 3 founding members were in another group named the 30 Years War, who released 2 EPs. Act 1, Scene 1 features as the second track on the band's sophomore album Doppelganger, released on May 16th, 2005. An interesting name for a song that's going to be number 2 on your album. But yeah, there we are. The trio started touring extensively from the release of Doppelganger through the first quarter of 2006. The track FCPREMIX was released as the only single from the album, which led to some mainstream success. The music video was released on June 6th of 2006 and received massive airplay on MTV and Fuse. The song was featured on the soundtrack for several video games in the wake of its release. Taking me back to MLB 2006 or whatever, hearing that song all the time. Over at Album of the Year, Doppelganger sits at 2 very different ratings. According to the aggregate critic score, based on 4 reviews, the album sits at a score of 70, while the aggregate user score, based on 924 entries, sits at a score of 82. So there you are. You have 4 write-ups from some, random critics, bringing in a middling 7 to 82 amongst the masses. Go ahead, sir.
You'll find this out later in a future episode, but I was doing some research for one of my songs and came across very, very, very similar. Critics were a bit sniffy about this particular band and this album. I'm on Metacritic, and then the user one was 15 points higher.
Yeah,
In terms of the other score, because you've got to be some particular type of an idiot or a real sort of twat to go on to Metacritic just to say, I hate this album.
Yeah,
You'd let it go. You wouldn't bother, would you? You'd only go on if you really love it.
exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
which is fair.
I was just who if there was even a chance that you weren't going to like an album, would you have even purchased it to begin with? You know what I mean? I know that happens, but it's not typical at all. Chances are, if you bought an album by a band, you've already liked the band and the sound that they've got going. So I took that with a bit of a grain of salt, sort of on both ends of that spectrum. 4 random critics critiquing a band that might not be their cup of tea, and then 940 some fanboys flocking to the internet to talk about how much they loved the album. It's probably somewhere in between, but go on. I don't want.
But it's nice to see that number of people that made the effort to do it. That's the indication, not really what they write. It's the numbers going there. If you got that, then it hits the mark with some people, definitely.
Obviously. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. If I'm the band, I'm much more buoyed by the 924 than I am the 70, the 4, or the 82. You know what I mean? Like the 4 critics, their rating of 70, or the 924's rating of an 82. The fact that almost 1,000 people got on to just took time out to say that they liked the album would be all I needed. So Daryl Sturden of the Tinnitus wrote of the album upon its release, 3 teenage shredders split the difference between emo, Van Halen, Yes, Mike Patton, Dillinger Escape Plan, and Mars Volta. Believe it or not, freaking credible. So go on. I saw you put up a finger.
They mentioned Yes, John Anderson. There you go.
Yeah, yep, there you are. Exactly.
Vindicated.
Yeah. The band's sound is characterized by a technical, intricate style, unorthodox song structures, and energetic live performances. Thomas Eric's alternating guitar riffs and rhythmic chord work, paired with the odd time signatures, set the band apart from other post-hardcore bands. They also include abrupt transitions between melody and dissonance, something you were pretty quick to underscore there, as well as interchanging clean vocals and screams, which was often split between Eric and Ward, respectively. The music has been described as danceable. However, the band members have stated to pay as much attention to the groove as to the complex structures of their music. At the beginning, the main influences of the fall of Troy were local bands from the Seattle area, including Botch, the Blood Brothers, Sunny Day Real Estate, Raft of Dead Monkeys, and Unwed Sailor. Raft of Dead Monkeys reminds me just like it was cut from the same cloth as your murderous lawnmower band name that you mentioned a moment ago. Uh, it's just some random name generator shit that is just almost like borderline comical. In addition to, yeah, again, the Texas post-hardcore act at the drive-in, which we have discussed at length on this band or on this channel in previous episodes. They've expressed admiration for New Jersey mathcore group the Dillinger Escape Plan as well. Andrew Forsman singled out drummer Billy Reimer as an inspiration, while Thomas Eric lauded their 1999 debut album Calculating Infinity. And now we are starting to see other bands cite the fall of Troy as an inspiration to their sound, with bands like California-based progsters Chon and the Australian band Closure in Moscow, who we featured on this channel and Into the Music, both mentioning the band as an influence to their respective sounds. So there you go. So let's jump into these lyrics that I know you probably struggled with given some of the delivery that was on display here. Open wide, space and time distort the mind. Constantly we dance in sheets. It feels so right to be so wrong. Normal love set aside. Leave your heart at the bedside. Contaminate the air like you do. Swear I'm telling you the truth. Jaded masquerade. No names. Contradicting fates. It's all the same. I'm telling you the truth. I'm telling you the truth. I swear I'm telling you the truth. I'm telling you the truth. I swear. I just want your attention, baby. Every sweat-soaked night, every taunting fight. Lock the doors, turn off the lights, remove all your clothes. Lock the doors, turn off the lights, remove all your clothes. Jaded masquerade, no names, contradicting fates. It's all the same. I'm telling you the truth. I'm telling you the truth, I swear. I'm telling you the truth. I'm telling you the truth. Lock the doors, turn off the lights, remove all your clothes. Lock the doors, turn off the lights, remove all your clothes. So, Act 1, Scene 1 depicts a chaotic, intense, and dysfunctional romantic relationship, as I'm sure you were probably able to pull from that. The song captures a love born out of chaos and intense, perhaps toxic intimacy, characterized by sweat soaked nights and taunting fights. It also focuses on blurring the lines between right and wrong and the desperate, almost manic desire for attention within a strained relationship. I also get huge shades of like, this is two people cheating on their other spouses with one another and having this sort of torrid outside the lines relationship with one another. I don't know if it's the whole right versus wrong or it feels so right to be so wrong. Normal love set aside. So it's almost like the normal love that's in their everyday relationships is set aside for this, I don't know, emotionally driven, lustful explosion of feelings that they have for one another. I don't know that to be true. It's just there's little key indicators that I don't know if it's true, but suggest that there might be something else beyond just the toxic relationship that they have with one another. So
Or perhaps people just gone a bit batshit because the aircon's down.
yeah, that could be it. Sure, sure. I didn't even
No,
think of that, John.
it sounds in tone a bit transactional, and I'm not saying money wise, but they are rationalizing it. It sounds like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they both get, and I don't want to use this term too literally because I'm sure that happens in the course of their interactions, but they get off on it. Like there's something there that is being fulfilled that is not being fulfilled elsewhere. And it's not exactly healthy for either party. And I think this is kind of like an acknowledgement of that. So, and these guys were young when this song was written, so of course they were probably, having relationships like this and learning lessons in the wake of the dissolution of those relationships. As I don't want to say we all were, but as plenty of us, we've all probably stepped in shit in our, earlier mid 20s when it comes to things like this and learned from it and taught us how to love better and truer later in life. So, yeah, interesting subject matter. But like you said, I mean, I'm a geezer that's north of 40. You're a geezer north of 50. This ain't exactly the stuff that is speaking to us now. Maybe it did to me in 2005. But I've thankfully for all parties have graduated from this kind of mentality or whatever, that's
It's
captured in the song.
it's time and place, isn't it? Because there's stuff that I'd have listened to when I was 17 or 22 that probably was I would recognise as sounding quite sort of young or juvenile, but it hit me then, and it stays with you.
Yeah, of course it
Um,
does. Yeah.
and so you can still listen to it now, and you don't hear anything like jarring about it. Whereas something else that you didn't hear at that time, and it may and listen, this doesn't this doesn't sit with me. It's just the way it is, isn't it? And you
Yep.
could play that to somebody else who may be younger than you, who still think, this sounds no, I don't get this at all. It's crazy. But it's
Exactly.
just where it hits you in the passage of your life that you take it with you, don't you?
Yep. You really do. You really do. Because the narrative, everyone's narrative isn't just the now. It's what has gotten you to where you are, and it's what's on the horizon. So yeah, there are songs for me that if I had heard fresh out of the gate at 42 years old, wouldn't have resonated with me, or I wouldn't listen to now, but because it hit me when I needed it at an earlier time in life, it still is going to be something that I go back to because it is, for me, oddly, even though it wasn't the writer's intent, is now somehow a very small part of my biography, or who I am and how I look at things. So yeah, yeah, absolutely, that's how it works. So yeah, I'm really glad you gave this one a spin, John, and gave it your honest assessment. I can't help but agree with you for the most part on your approach to this and how you ingested it. Rosetta Stone, thank you for offering this. There were really, I know you're probably not over the moon that we weren't like, oh my God, this is great. But there were absolute talent, moments of talent on display in this song, especially in that post rock portion when the waters become calm again for the drums only to come fading from the distance back into the picture. And then that latter 45 seconds of tranquility to give everybody a minute for their adrenaline to kind of come back down to earth. I really enjoyed this song. It was not wholly, but I really enjoyed aspects of the song. And I'm glad that I gave it a listen. I'm glad I got to hear John's perspective on it too. So yeah, appreciate you, Brozetta. Appreciate you, John, having given this a go. Guys out there in the listening audience, if you're wondering how you can get a song from your past or your present onto our channel in the future, please feel free to drop down in the comments field below and leave a suggestion. If at least one of us hasn't heard it, we will add it to our list and we will aim to get to it down the line. Also, please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done any or all of those things. Goes a long way to help us here at the channel. It only costs you a couple seconds of your time. We really do appreciate it. But all that out of the way, I hope you all have a great weekend, and we'll see you all on the next episode of the Audiophiles. See you later, guys.